Telepathic interspecies communication. Who are we communicating with? How can we communicate with other forms of life on this planet and indeed on other planets? That and more we're going to discuss on the show today with the wonderful Penelope Smith, who is an telepathic interspecies communicator. It's going to be a wonderful show.
You got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Hello, and welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. We are, of course, on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, syndicated radio all over the world, and streaming live on about 8 different platforms today. And I have the wonderful Penelope Smith with me. Welcome to the show, Penelope.
Thank you so much, Karen. I appreciate it.
Penelope is a wealth of information. Like I always say, every show I get people to come on at least half an hour before we go live, and if all their tech is okay, we chat. No, we have these fabulous conversations before I hit the live button. So there's a few things we've touched on today already, and I said, "Oh, can we talk about that on the show? Can we talk about that on the show?" Which we'll get into because it wasn't really the topic of the conversation, which is about animals, of course. And we've got the gorgeous Vladdy Heidi here. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, Penelope has been in the consciousness field, well, I was going to say for a long time, but for lifetimes. We were talking about that. So she's a wealth of information. You can ask her anything about anything, really. But you're famous for, and until Mary reached out to me and said, would you like to have Penny on the show? I hadn't heard about you. And then when I did, a lot of people started talking about you, going, oh, how amazing that you are, and you've been doing this, and you're an expert in this field. How did you get into it? Was it something that you were like, did you hit the ground running? Did you have all those telepathic communications online as a child, and then it just expanded?
Yes, I like that, hit the ground running. I was always aware of myself as a spiritual being. I was aware of my mission in life. And I was also aware that all other beings, no matter what their form, they were the same as me, only they looked different. They had different costumes. So I communicated telepathically, that is through thoughts and feelings, with animals from when I was a child. And I obviously didn't think of it as a profession at that time. I just communicated, and other people were not open to this. You can imagine this was a long time ago, and people were not open to this at all. And my mother told me, oh, you have a very active imagination. And I just decided, instead of giving it up like most people do, as soon as other people don't approve, when you're a child, you want other people's approval, you want to belong. And so I just decided, no, I don't want to give up all my relationships with all these other beings for the sake of pleasing a few human beings. And so I just decided to keep it to myself. And I had the mission to make the world a better place, to help people to awaken, really, because I was aware they were not aware of who they were. They were not aware of their spiritual nature. And I just looked at, as time went on, how I was going to do this, what profession was I going to be in, how this was going to evolve, and different opportunities opened up. I became a spiritual counselor for people. And then I applied the same principles and techniques to animals with incredible results in the early 1970s, and found that this was really wonderful. Of course, I loved animals all my life. And I just went, this wakes people up, because they hear about what their animal is communicating. They listen to their animals being aware of themselves as spiritual beings, and they wake up to their own spiritual nature by recognizing it in their animal friends who they love. So I found it the perfect venue. I was before focusing on people and helping them through their difficulties and their traumas, to help them to get the burdens out of the way so they could realize more of their true nature. But I found this to be just absolutely incredible. Animals were the perfect communicators for this. They showed the way. They were not afraid to communicate about their true nature. And people were astounded. People became more and more aware as they became aware of what the animals could think and feel and decide, and how aware they were. It just was the way for me.
Yeah. Beautiful. Vladdy says here, I hope some animals can forgive me for my wrongdoing. That's interesting, Vladdy. I wonder what wrongdoing you think that you've done to the animals. I had someone called Garnet Schulhauser on the show many times, whose spirit guide woke him up about 10 or 15 years ago. He was a corporate lawyer before that, and showed him many things across the cosmos. But when he realized that his little dog was the same soul as any other soul, I think that I asked him, of all the things that you've experienced, what's the thing that's been the most profound? He said that, realizing that. And he said when he was a busy corporate lawyer and he'd come home exhausted from work, and the dog would be at the door, barking, hello, hello, hello. And he could be like, go away, I'm tired, don't hassle me. He just like you, Vladdy, he was like, please forgive me, I didn't realize, like he didn't realize that it's, a soul is a soul. It's not an animal soul and a human soul. It's just a soul.
Right.
What do you want to say about that? And do the animals need to forgive us humans?
Throughout the years of communicating with many thousands of animals of all species, I feel like the greatest thing that I have learned from animals is their tremendous compassion for humans. They have a tremendous understanding of the difficulty of being a human being and the human condition and our confusion. So you'll get animals being right there for you over and over again, because they get it. They get that you don't get it, that you don't understand who you are, that you're confused, that you need help. And I give the symbol that I got. You know how they have the symbol of the pyramid of life, and they show humans are at the top, and all it goes down to the bottom where all these other supposedly lower animals. And I go, the pyramid is right in that the humans need the support of everybody else in that triangle. Right. And without it, they topple, they fall. If they deny their connection to animals, plants, the mountains, Mother Earth, all the other beings in the universe, they become disaffected. They become, as you can see in our society, mentally ill. Yeah. And so I looked at that and I went, when people realize, just like the indigenous people have been telling for all these years, and still the indigenous people on the planet hold that we are brothers and sisters, and we rely on the animals and the mountains and the earth. We rely on them for our wholeness, for our sanity on all levels, mental, physical, spiritual, everything. And so when you start to reverse this thinking of humans and realize that we're all in it together, but we need everybody else, wow, things change. And I find that people get so much happier. They start to tap into their own joy, the beauty and depth and simplicity of life with all these other beings comes to them. But the animals are very patient. So while you may want to ask forgiveness, at the same time, they've already forgiven. There's nothing for them. There's nothing to forgive. They just go, humans have it hard. and they're
Yeah.
very unconscious. And so I'm just going to be here and keep loving them and understand them, and they'll wake up.
I get it. So this would be all the animals that we, slaughter and put in cages and force feed, to make pate, and all those animals. Are they forgiving us as well, do you think?
There's endless forgiveness in the universe. Beings have their paths. When we come to Earth, Earth is this great adventure place where you can have any kind of adventure that you want. And some of the adventures are horrendous.
Yeah.
And so sometimes for a spirit on their journey, a soul on their journey, who takes on animal form, is learning, say they're taking the form of a dog, they're learning this incredible love and devotion. And say they take the form of a cow and they end up being slaughtered. They're also learning about that aspect of life. And that is their soul journey. So I respect all beings' soul journey. It doesn't mean that humans don't have to change their behavior. Yes, that's part of everyone's soul journey, is to move into more and more of the love of all beings and the unity of all beings. But all these things that happen, they aren't just happening. Beings have chosen those paths. They may be horrible paths. You see all that's happening on the earth. I won't mention places on the earth because we could go anywhere and see horrendous things happening to all species. And you go, okay, so I'm here on earth. What am I to learn from this part of my journey? How is this going to increase my evolution into greater consciousness? And that's what every being is asking themselves. They may not ask it, well, especially humans who forget they're on a spiritual journey. They may not be asking it now, but they'll ask it later. They'll go, okay, what was that all about? And so the cow who got killed in the slaughterhouse, or the human who got killed in a war, or whatever it is, they're going to look at it and go, okay, what was that about? And what do I learn from that? How do I grow from that? And what do I do next? So their next step may be, okay, I think I'm going to work to end war. I'm going to work to end whatever it is they went through, or whatever it is they're going to learn. That's their business. Each individual has their sacred contract journey. And what they decide to do on that journey. So a lot of people get very incensed and they blame humans. And I just go, we're all in this together. And you just have to look at your own journey, what you're learning from it, and you can learn from others. You find out what they're learning, what it's about to them, and then you learn from them too.
Yeah. So like all souls, before we embark on the challenge of the physical journey, we know what we're up for. So like an animal that is going to be a veal stuck in a cage its whole life and die after 6 months of life, or a year, or whatever it is, or a goose that's force fed, or a pig that the soul embarking on that experience has chosen that. And then after they've had that experience and they've felt what it was like to be a physical being and to have that incarceration, now they make decisions about what next. So maybe a lot of the angry vegans that are very passionate about compassion for animals have been those animals, maybe.
And then there's the other side of the coin, Karen, where I've one time, I'll give you an example. I went to a zoo. I used to love to just go and communicate with the animals at the zoo and see if there was anything that, we could do together to help with their situation. And there was this one leopard who was going back and forth, back and forth. You know how they pace in their cage? It was going back and forth, back and forth. So I just sat there and he paid no attention to me. I was trying to connect with him and he didn't want to connect. So I just sat on the bench near him. And I said, if you wish to communicate with me, I'm open to it. And you can tell me anything that you want about your life. So it was very interesting. He stopped his pacing for a brief moment, looked at me, continued to pace, but communicated with me. And he showed me, he said, I know what this is about. It's very frustrating, and I feel really pent up, and I really want to get out of here, but I know why I'm here. And he showed me his previous life. He had been a poacher. He had been killing endangered animals, including leopards, and selling them for their pelts on the black market. And this was his what happened to him. He had to, obviously they call it karma, and he had to experience what it was like to be a leopard who was mistreated, because basically in the zoo situation, and in those days in particular where it was all cages, it wasn't natural habitats, or they didn't get to roam around hundreds of acres like in some places they do now, but it was just a cage, horrible situation. And so he got to experience the life of the beings whose life he took. And, beings basically know when they're doing what's wrong. They may not admit it in that lifetime, but he knew that this was not, you couldn't do this to your fellow beings and not pay the price. So he paid the price. He saw what it was like to be that being and to feel so tortured.
Yeah.
So that was part of his journey. So I never judge people's journeys, beings' journeys, because they're going to learn whatever they're going to learn. So he told me that, and he actually felt a lot better because he got the clarity on it. And because the only reason he could open up to that was because I was there and I understood him.
Right.
And so he then could open up to that. And so that helped to release some of his debt, as they say, and then help him to live a better life. And so I told him, I said, well, I hope that you can, understand more from this lifetime, and that you can live a better life your next lifetime. And so I just left him there.
It helped him become more accepting of his circumstances. So that segues into a question that was on the tip of my tongue about, in many religions like Hinduism, they talk about the evolution. Christianity doesn't talk about reincarnation at all, just wipes it off the board. But in other religions, they talk about the evolution of the soul, and that you start as an animal, then you evolve into a human. But what you're saying, and so that's a consensus that's widely accepted, what you're saying is not necessarily. Do you want to speak of that?
This to me is, as much as there's so many beautiful truths in these different spiritual traditions, this particular one on reincarnation, where the teaching is that there's lower beings, and that if you have bad karma, you're going to end up as an insect or something. I haven't found that to be the case at all. I've found that beings have a choice. They can go into any form that they want. It depends on their journey. And what it is that they want to learn. Some people have a very strong path to serve and help humans, and so they become human often. And then sometimes they'll become other animals because they can help in other ways. And so it doesn't matter what form you are. I've met many beings of other species who are far more aware than most humans.
Yeah.
And I've talked to insects who are incredibly aware, and people get this idea, again, this is human manufacturing of ideas that aren't validated by the reality of the animal, because you're not communicating to the animal. When you find out from them, they'll tell you about their awareness, their connection to the unity of life. When you talk to worms, when you talk to slugs, when you talk to insects, you'll find the awareness of their place in life and how they're working with it. And you get some very evolved beings who are all kinds of different forms, including all the way up to elephants and dolphins and whales, who we often recognize as very aware beings. But it doesn't matter the form. When you connect with them, you'll find out that you'll learn a tremendous amount. And I find that you can learn from these other beings about the unity of life, where you won't get that as much from humans.
Right.
And humans have forgotten so much.
From many humans, maybe from most humans.
Yeah, exactly.
So in talking about, levels of consciousness, again, the consensus has been that the humans are more superior and are heightened consciousness than the animals. And then some people say, no, animals are much more superior. They don't start wars, and they don't, do this, and they don't do that. Again, what do you want to say about that?
Well, first of all, these are the black and white viewpoints.
Right.
It's really not, it's individual. So you'll get some individuals of some species that are very, very aware, and then you'll get other individuals that are not very aware of who they are and what's happening. Although most animals retain the consciousness of themselves as spiritual beings living an experience as a dog or an insect or whatever. But they're individuals. You communicate and you find out. And so the idea that they don't start wars, I laugh at that. A lot of people, they compare humans often to other primates because we're primates. So they compare us to other primates, and we say, well, we're more like other primates, but we're nothing like other beings, and we're certainly not like insects. But I've communicated with and studied, in other words, just been with and learned from many, many animals. And I would say, actually, we're more like ants. If you really communicate with ants, you'll find, first of all, they're extremely intelligent, which all animals are, but intelligence is a factor of what it is your mission in life, what it is in your place in the web of life. So you're geared to what you can do in that particular place. But so the ants, so when people say they don't create wars, ants have wars. Ants kill other groups of ants if they trespass. You gotta be recognized. That's why animals sniff each other and why they sense each other. They recognize each other's groups, and so when you say, no, they don't have war, no, I mean, if you start communicating and you start really looking don't put these biases aside, put these other ideas aside and start looking. Well, some animals have been responsible for, completely decimating an environment. And because they're hungry and because, it's gotten dry and they've destroyed the environment and destroyed their own species. And you go, and then you get ants and other insects and other animals who do war against each other. Can you not think of many examples of animals who fight other packs of animals, who will go out and kill another member of another species? You even get bears. A male bear will kill a baby bear.
Ooh,
mother bears have to really protect their baby bears against male bears. So, but there's reasons for this in terms of survival of the species and all that. Right. There is the same in humans. See, we keep thinking we're something different. And the point is, we have our function in the web of life too. And all that humans do is part of their function and their learning. No, humans are not the most farsighted. Definitely, except for a few. They are not the most farsighted species. They wait till they're on the brink and everybody's falling off the edge, and then they go, well, maybe we ought to change something.
Exactly.
Like they see, 100,000 people have just died. Well, maybe we ought to change something. Yeah. And to me, I go, why denigrate it? Why call it something terrible and all the animals are better than us? This is the thing that other people have said, and other people go, okay, we're superior. And it's not about superior or inferior. It's about this is the playground full of adventures.
Yeah.
What adventure do you want to learn from?
Yeah, so the message would be, the resounding message would be that, like humans, there are different levels of consciousness throughout the animal kingdom, even with the same species. So there are different, of the same species, different levels of consciousness
Definitely.
in animals like in humans, and don't put it in the black and white, all animals are less conscious or more conscious, because I think that it's the animal lovers that say that, animals are far superior to humans. But there's a lot of animal lovers that I've spoken to over the years that I don't like humans. I only like to, to be with animals, not humans, because humans are awful and animals are better. They get very black and white about all this stuff.
But look at that, Karen. It's the reason people get so upset about humans and then make animals the angels is because they're looking in the mirror. When you look at another human, you really are looking in the mirror. Right. So you look at them and you go, oh, I don't like what they're doing. Well, what is it, as you know, the principle, what is it you don't like and accept about yourself? We've got the human condition to deal with, to love and accept before we can fully evolve into union, even with ourselves.
Yeah.
So people get all tied up in knots about, why even think about superior and inferior? It's irrelevant. We're all in this together. We're all working the game of life. How can we cooperate with each other? Exactly. How can we be with the other beings on the planet, whatever species they are? How can we be with our own species? That's the big one. We have the most difficult time being with our own species. I mean, exactly. I get it all the time because I deal with animal lovers. So I hear people say all the time, like, I just prefer to be with animals. Well, I understand. I mean, the animals are taking care of you. They're loving you. They're being there for you. I mean, it's something we need as humans. Yeah. And so particularly if you're not getting that from humans, I mean, you really value it. And at the same time, it's our journey to get along with humans.
Right, exactly.
A hard journey, but
there's quite a few comments and questions here. But Patricia says that she loved your books, and I forgot to mention your books. Great story, loved reading it in the books. Let me speak about your books. I even forgot to read your bio because we just got straight into the conversation today. But so Penny has. Let me remove that from the.
It's Penelope, by the way.
Sorry, Penelope. Sorry. I know lots of Penelopes that call themselves pennies. Penelope has 3 books. Animal Speaks, The Animals and Spirit, and Animal Talk. You said that Animal Talk is the one. Is that the one that you wrote first?
That's the foundation book. That's the how-to book. So for people who want to learn how to communicate with animals, that's the book to go to. And the other books expand on that. And Animals and Spirit is particularly to focus on animals who are dying, their viewpoints on dying and death, and how you can get in touch with them afterwards. And When Animals Speak is like an advanced version of Animal Talk, where we go into a lot of different aspects of communicating with all species, all life.
So there's a couple of questions in the comments here. There's Susanna and Susan. And Susan says, can you speak about animals picking up on earth changes like earthquakes and storms? Yeah, great question. Thanks, Susan.
First of all, animals have senses. Different animals have different senses that are so highly attuned. And the problem, we as humans have very good senses also, but we have, in our society, we're not geared to amplifying our senses, to focusing on our senses. So we lose the acuity of our senses. So people are organized towards screens now and not the environment, where animals, if they don't have their acuity in their hearing, in their smelling, in their taste, in all the things that they sense their environment, they're dead. I mean, the fact is, for wild animals, you are living by your senses. So anything you don't use, it atrophies. So humans can get more of their senses back, but animals are just naturally attuned to keeping their senses. So even our domesticated animals, they're listening. You get dogs who have the hearing, and cats who have such incredible sense of hearing, and dogs with their sense of smell, so they can hear things from miles away. You get dogs who are barking and people say, well, there's nothing there. Well, nothing that
Yeah.
let me give an example of this. Often people think commonly people think chickens are very stupid. And I have had chickens as companions in my family for about 40 years. So I know different. And over the years, have gotten many people to communicate with my chickens and get to know them both in person when I held advanced courses in person and at a distance. And you find they have incredible language. They have incredible amount of communication. They have incredible senses. So one time I was about to go out of town, and this person came to be the house sitter to stay at my house. And I was showing her around, and I showed her, we were at the chickens, and she said, chickens are so dumb. And I'm going, wince. But she says, they make all this noise and they make all these alarms and there's nothing there. So, and I said, well, I was just about to explain to her how they have hearing that is way, way beyond ours. And they pick up vibrations in their body that is way, way beyond what most humans are attuned to, unless they're indigenous people who are practicing on their senses and using their senses all the time. So as we were standing there, my chicken started alarming, and she started to say to me, look, there's nothing there. In that moment, what a teaching, a hawk flew down and caught a dove midair just above her head.
Wow.
right next to the chickens. But the chickens had picked this up, that this was going to happen, that they felt and heard the hawk, that it was going to happen. And they were alarming to tell all their other chickens that we better be safe. But of course, they're safe. They're in an enclosure. They're not going to get, but the hawk came down and I didn't say anything. She just looked and she got her lesson. I didn't have to teach her that when they're alarming, there is a reason. You may not see it. And so I'll just ask them, because I don't have those acute senses that they do. So sometimes they'll start alarming. I said, what is it? And they said, well, there's a coyote about 50 yards away. And they show me, I can't see them because they're among the trees and in the bushes. And they said, and they're coming this way. And I said, okay, I got that. And you guys know that you're totally safe. And they said, we know that we're totally safe. And at the same time, we have to alert each other. And they're just keeping their senses attuned. They're not letting themselves get squishy. But this is the kind of thing that people learn, is they make all these interpretations about what animals do that are completely unfounded on the reality of being the animal. So when you communicate with the animal, you get their communication, but you also feel all their senses. So I can feel what the chickens are feeling. So I start to they share with me, there's a coyote, and I start to see their images of the coyote, and they're the little tiny twigs that crack when the coyote moves that I can't hear, but they can.
Yeah.
So when you talk about earth changes or earthquakes or storms, these are big. These are huge for animals. I'll tell you what I have noticed with my critters. We had in 1989, and I lived in California at the time. There was the Loma Prieta earthquake. Some people may remember this, in south of San Francisco. And I was outside, and the ground started to go boom, boom, and I just went, oh my goodness, it's an earthquake. So I just stayed in place. I watched my dogs and cats had a dog and cat door. I watched what they did. My dogs went out on the driveway and lay down where there were no trees.
Uh-huh.
And so I followed them. I said, well, they know where to go. I just followed them and I went to the same place they did. My cats did the same thing. They went out and they made sure, and we were in a forest. So they went out to an area that was clear because to them, well, they know the biggest danger is with this earth rumbling is that these big trees are going to fall on the house.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of my cats, after the earthquake, and there were aftershocks, she wouldn't come in for 24 hours. She said, I'm not coming inside. I fed her outside, but she said, I'm not coming inside the house. And she could feel the aftershocks that I couldn't feel.
Uh-huh.
She could feel these tiny little aftershocks in the earth. And she says, I'll come in when the earth has quieted. So yes, they can feel all this. I mean, look at when there was the great tsunamis, how the animals were already running to higher ground. And they were trying to warn people. You got elephants trumpeting and trying to warn people and warn everybody. There's something big coming. It's rumbling. It's coming this way. It's going to cover us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's a lot to do with senses. You know, our senses are so acute, and people think, well, it's something mystical. Really, it's physical senses, and our telepathic senses are finer tuned, and they're extended. They kind of add on to it. They add on to our ability.
So the animals are picking up this information not just with their physical senses, but they also have heightened physical senses, heightened sense of smell and hearing and feeling vibration, but they have heightened sense of telepathy and psychic, what we call psychic senses.
Yes.
Susanna here has a question. She says she wants to talk about, can I ask about her stray cat? Susanna's got I don't know, I think about 8 or 10 cats. How many cats have you got now? She asks here, what are they here to teach, and why is it some areas are so much more impacted? Why do they go to some people and not others? I think you're talking about stray cats, right?
Yes. Yeah, she mentioned stray cats. So when people said, what are they here to teach? Now, each of them has their own journey. So while you may communicate with the group, and there may be a group leader that you can communicate who says, well, we're here in this area for this reason. It's very good to communicate with the individuals, because they each may have their reason. They may go, well, I'm in this group of cats because I wanted to learn this, or I'm here to help these other guys because we're in the same soul group and we travel together and we decided we're going to be cats this lifetime, or I wanted to relate to these people. So a lot of times people take it all very personally. And again, they get into the human blame thing. So they get, oh, it's humans who are at fault for this and that. And really, when you talk to the animals, they give a lot of different perspectives. Yes, humans have their part in different situations, but really, I can't answer that as a generality. I would have to ask that group of animals. And I suggest that you who have this connection and love for these cats, just sit quietly with them. Extend your senses. Let your senses open up, and ask the group leader or a favorite cat in the group that you have become close to your questions. They'll answer you.
Yeah.
And they'll be very happy that you communicated with them, because you're honoring them and their purpose here. So it gets much more elevated, because you start to get, instead of getting this human worry and, oh dear, I got to fix this, and oh dear, this is bad. You talk to the animals and they, they're not giving you, this is bad. You just don't. I find that animals in all kinds of horrible situations they'll find the best thing about the situation and tell you what's good about it. And they'll be so grateful. You rescue a stray animal, they're going to be grateful for every beautiful thing. And
I know. I spend hours I spend hours watching things like on the dodo, watching stray dogs and animals being rescued. That just warms my heart. I
Oh,
just spend hours watching. It
it's
just
so very
warms my
beautiful.
heart.
But see, this is where we have the beauty of it, of how we can help each other, how we can cooperate, how we can make our lives better with each
Yeah.
other. But if we
Yeah.
get too much into this human blame trip or making people wrong, then you miss the elevated part of it. The animals will teach you the higher purposes of things. You ask them and they'll go, well, I think this is a real trip. I really like being a cat who's not connected to anything but who I want to be connected to.
Right. Yeah.
And they'll tell you whether they want to be with people or not with people or whatever. You'll just learn a lot.
Exactly. I've spoken to dolphins, like, because a lot of people get really upset about, captured sea life, and the dolphins had said to me, I quite like it. Some people don't. Some of them don't. They want their freedom, but I kind of like hanging around humans and being fed every day. And like, it's different strokes for different blokes. There's a great question here from Karen Kelly. Hi everyone. Why do some animals become extinct? Is it by design? Great
Okay,
question.
this is a very good one. I like this one a lot because years ago, people were so concerned about animals going extinct. And I tuned in to all the animals that have ever lived. And I got their perspective of how the energy flows in and out of life forms. And basically, it's bodies come, bodies go. There's nothing permanent.
Right.
We're rolling through energy forms, we're learning different things. And remember that movie, Field of Dreams? And the theme was, when you build it, they will come. Well, when you give the right environment, they will come. So a lot of people think that certain animals are extinct. They haven't seen them in 50 years. No, everybody's looked all around and they haven't found them. And then they find them in a particular area, or they suddenly appear in Central Park in New York. Why? The particular circumstances for their existence came about. And so, like, I don't know if you read Plato and his world, the world of forms. The forms are always there, ready and available. If they're meant to be in the physical, they appear again. So people always ask me, well, will dinosaurs appear again? I said, well, it's not up to me, but they did have their day.
Yeah.
And bodies come, bodies go. And if you get this bigger perspective, if you tune into the Mother Earth and her wisdom, you'll see that everything is moving all the time. And again, people get fixed into this idea that death is bad and extinction, what they call extinction, is bad, but actually bodies can return, forms can return if it is meant to be. And right now we're going through tremendous change on the planet. So it's not right for many beings. It doesn't fit anymore. There's too much pollution, or it's too cold, or it's too hot, or it's too this, or it's too that. But it doesn't mean that the earth cannot replenish, that they will not pop up again if conditions are right for them. So I don't get into a big thing about it. I applaud people who do work to save species. I mean, that's their work, and I think it's beautiful. Anything you do that increases love and cooperation and helps beings to flourish, to me, is great. But in the bigger picture, all bodies will come and all bodies will go.
Well, talking to the ETs, during the Australian fires at the end of 2019, 20, the beginning of 2020, there was a lot of news across the world about how all the exclusive Australian wildlife was being burnt. Australia is a big place, I have to say, and the fires were in a very small area of Australia, but there were a lot of marsupials that were killed. And I had a communication in the shower with the ETs showing me that they had all the DNA, and they had picked up some of the animals, but they had all the DNA, like they have suppositories, like libraries of DNA, and that any anybody can be, come back again. They just said that there's really no extinction. Don't worry about it. And I said, okay, that's cool.
There's infinite creation.
There's infinite creation, exactly. And also I was watching something recently, the Tasmanian tiger, which was a tiger-like looking animal that lived in Tasmania, exclusively in Tasmania. There's a lot of animals in Australia that are exclusive to our land that was purported to be extinct, but there have been over the years sightings of it. So it's not exactly extinct, but it's just elusive. But yeah, it's fascinating, all this stuff too.
And sometimes animals will go into another dimension. There are many animals, and I have many times swum with dolphins and whales, and they are very multidimensional, and they easily appear and disappear before your eyes. And dragonflies and bees and butterflies. There's all kinds of animals that are interdimensional. So when conditions aren't right physically and all the animals are suffering, they're it's not working for them anymore. A lot of them, it's just a shift into another dimension. So that form, like Plato's forms, if you read what Plato said, the forms live in the other dimension and they can return. I mean, what is the physical? The physical is energy moving around and around. It's not something different than other dimensions. So you can pop into this dimension and pop into other dimensions. So there, again, when people get very worried and they get very sad about all that's happening, I understand that on a very specific human level. But at the same time, if you start tuning into all the beings, you'll get happy again, because they're going, well, as I got bodies come, bodies go, we're doing a dance here. And the energy just flows through. So what's the big deal? And we're learning when we are embodied, or when we go to other dimensions and then return again, we're learning about our infinite creation capacity. Exactly. And so really there's nothing to get hung up about. I would say just continue to do the work that you're attracted to. Continue to do the service, whether you're helping the stray cats or whether you're rescuing animals. Continue to do the service that your heart directs you to do, because it's all good. It all increases the love.
Yeah. And in saying that, Susanna says, this was the woman that asked about her the stray cats. She says she's got 8 at home and she feeds a colony of 8 stray cats. And they have taught me so much. The love I feel for them all is huge. I love watching their different personalities. But I have to do a station ID break. There's a lot more comments here I haven't got to. You are listening to ATP Media, Accentuate the Positive, Awakening and Expanding Consciousness, on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, syndicated radio through 107.7 and 105.3 FM, all over the place. I think we touch about 120 countries. We're streaming live on 8 different platforms today. And my guest is Penelope Smith, animal communicator, interspecies telepathy, communication. I want to get into, you were talking about dragonflies, and I instantly thought of dragons and Sasquatch and many extinct or mythical animals. Have you, and I also want to talk about other species, like if you are telepathically communicating with dragonflies and cats and dogs and geese and chickens and everything.
And dragons, yes.
And telepathy is telepathy. You're also communicating with ETs and spirits and angels and dead people. And so you can communicate, once you expand those abilities. I don't call them gifts. I call them abilities. I think we can all do it. Yeah. But Sasquatch and dragons.
I love Sasquatch.
Let's talk
I have
about
had so much
that.
experience with Sasquatch. Now, one of my memories, and I have a lot of, when as a spiritual counselor, I worked with past life regression, and I did a lot of past life regressions myself, and I just recovered my memories. And one of my memories was being actually Yeti, which is related to Sasquatch, another version of Sasquatch, in the Himalayas. And I lived a lifetime, and my mission was, I mean, I loved it in the cold. I loved the snow. I loved having that form. It was so beautiful, but we were interdimensional. So we could, if humans came along, we could quickly shift. Sometimes people would see us and they would go, oh, or they would see the footprints, but then we'd shift. But I remember one time there was a big avalanche and there were a lot of humans that were covered up. So I just uncovered them. And that became part of my thing that I like to do, is to help humans who got in trouble in the mountains. And I found that as a Yeti, my awareness was connected to many, many beings on the planet and off planet. And also that as a Yeti, you didn't have to die to leave the form. We were very able to shift. So I would just get another of my tribe, another being who wanted to experience this, and I would just leave. I would just say, okay, I've had my experience. I've done this beautiful thing, because it was a very highly connected thing. And now it's, your turn, if you'd like. So then we would just shift. And that was not a big deal for us.
Yeah.
Now, I have to tell you another experience, which was very visceral and happened to me in this lifetime. Now, I've been aware that there are Sasquatch and that they're in different places, but they're interdimensional beings. This is why people often will see them for a short time, then they don't see them anymore, or they'll see imprints, because they come in and they go out. They don't really want to be close to people because most people are less aware than they are. Now, there is a particular smell. I had this experience. I was visiting a friend in Malibu, and I camped. I used to camp with my dog in my car, and I was out in the car, and I smelled this smell, and I went, oh my gosh. It's a smell of, if you've ever been in the old time zoos, where again, I go back a lot longer than a lot of people. So the old time zoos, they really smelled. You go into animal houses and it was really strong. It's not so much nowadays, but it was very strong stench. Well, this was the same smell. And there I am in my car, and I'm aware that one of these beings, a Sasquatch, has come into this dimension. And I have heard of other people who have mentioned smells. People have different experience with them, and there's different tribes of Sasquatch. So anyway, this being wanted to communicate to me, and my body got scared. I'm going, oh my gosh, if they come and they're right outside my car, oh my gosh. And then there was this experience of uniting with them, that he or she, there really wasn't, didn't matter, wanted to unite because I could telepathically communicate. So we communicated, and I could feel the union, which is very common with telepathy, that you feel what other beings feel. And he just wanted that particular experience. And I said, and I let him know, my body's a little bit scared, so I would prefer if you don't materialize or try to get into my car or anything like that, okay? And that was an experience. And I personally can communicate to any of them around the planet if they want to communicate. I don't have to go see them or try to find them or get them to materialize. But this was the first time in this lifetime that I experienced a physical manifestation of them. So that was interesting.
Wow, I'd love to. We call them down under, we call them the Yowie, and they've got different names throughout the planet.
They're all over.
They're all over the place.
But
when you talk about them being interdimensional, I mean, so are we. I mean, we're all interdimensional. But what you're saying, this is a question I have. So, do they have the ability? And I'm thinking of a book that was made into a movie that names escapes me. Do they have the ability to be in their physical body and then to shift their frequency,
dematerialize? Yes.
So that their physical form is not cannot be
Exactly.
perceived through our physical senses. So
Exactly.
therefore they're invisible to us.
They're invisible. So while we are all interdimensional beings, and I have experienced my physical form disappearing and
Right.
reappearing, I have
Right.
also experienced other beings' forms disappearing and reappearing. Most human beings are not conscious of that ability,
Right.
or can use it consciously. And to me, there's not a whole lot of use for it, except if you're trying to get away from, nasty people or something like that. And you want to go invisible, like get your magic cloak on or something. But with a Yeti or Sasquatch or whatever names they're called in various places, they live in a particular, their dimension is a dimension of connection. Humans in their physicality are not in a dimension of connection. As you can see, a lot of humans have a lot of difficulty. Many, yes.
Many, most, not all.
And I'm thinking about the many. Again,
Yeah.
I've met many, many beings who are very conscious, and people
Right.
are waking up all the time. So I thank you for that adjustment. But with
I
a
only say that
Yeti,
because I only say that, Penelope, because I have a yearning for humans to become
Everybody.
more aware,
Exactly.
for that to change. So go on.
So you can get a Yeti in the physical, making footprints, picking up snowballs if they're in the Himalayas, or moving things around. And then when they feel a danger, and normally the only danger there is from humans, then they dematerialize. They go into another dimension. The human cannot see them. Now, there are some people that can still see them. And you get sightings. Yes.
Yeah.
You get sightings, and people think they're seeing them physically, but they're not. They're seeing them in the other dimension. The Yeti or the Sasquatch has already left. But you can always communicate with them. If you're in tune with your telepathic senses, you can communicate with them. And that is why sometimes these beings or ETs or other beings will come, because they recognize that your telepathic senses are open. So they come and they want to communicate, because they don't find too many humans who they can communicate with. So they go, okay, you can communicate. It's the same thing I get with people on the other side. They communicate with me, and sometimes they want help with things, and because I'm available. So I've always been available to them. I've communicated to a lot of beings who have gone on. I particularly like it. I mean, I really love communicating to beings who have gone on. We have a lot to share, and it's very beautiful. But so these beings who are interdimensional, and dragons. Okay.
Just before we get into dragons, I wanted to share this story.
I don't get to talk about this very often. So
sorry. We got time. There was a book made into a movie, and its name, I know it's on the tip of my tongue, but anyway, there's a scene in the movie where these people are at this conscious sort of retreat, and they're in South America, and the military are trying to shut down the retreat because they're expanding their consciousness, and the military. So there's a chasing scene. The military have the machine guns, and they're chasing these people through the jungle, and they arrive at some sacred site, and they surround these sort of rocks, the sacred site, and they all meditate and shift their frequency. So they're all standing in this clearing, and then the military people come out of the jungle, and they can't see them because they've shifted their vibration. So they're physically standing there, but that because they know how to consciously, deliberately shift their physical vibration to another frequency, the military people cannot. So they are invisible, but they're still there. So again, that's sort of depicting what you're saying. The Sasquatch do, and it was, put into this book. All right, let's get into dragons. What's Susan saying here?
Well, I have this great love for dragons. And from when I was very young, I always knew that dragons did exist on the planet.
Yeah.
And so
as physical
physical beings,
did they breathe fire, Penelope?
Some of them did breathe fire.
Some of them did. Okay.
But like the Sasquatch and the Yetis, dragons again they're associated with high spiritual places. So you find them with the llamas. they associated with meditation. So when I was a lama in a cave many years ago, up in the Himalayas, a dragon came to me and we communicated. And the dragon had particular something wanted to communicate to me about, and it was very, very spiritually aware. And we communicated, and the dragon acted as a protector to me in my cave because I was there, and people were coming to me for awareness and for healings and all these things. But the dragon was most of the time invisible. Now, other people could see dragons. Other people were aware of them, and dragons did fly around. And then there came a time when it was no longer safe. It was no longer right for them to be visible
on Earth.
So they pretty much disappeared from the earth. But other people are still aware of them, and you still can communicate with them. It's the same with unicorns and all these that are called mythical beings. Right. These are beings that are interdimensional beings who can walk on the earth, but choose not to at different times, because what's the point? What's the point when there's billions of humans who actually do not want to have anything to do with them?
But I have heard from other teachers that many of those mythical beings will return as physical beings as consciousness shifts on the planet.
Exactly.
Like they moved away because we just got so out of control. And
you got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my awareness also. The same with dragons, with unicorns, with Yeti, Sasquatch. They're not going to put themselves in a position of having to be in a lower vibration.
Right. And
so to relate to people, you have to relate in a lower vibration. So they just went, there's really no point.
Yeah.
We're out of here.
Yeah, exactly. But they'll return as we shift. We shift, like even the gnomes and the elves and the elemental beings that are physically on our planet, but just like we spoke about the Sasquatch, they're here in physical bodies, but their physical bodies are a different frequency, so we don't perceive them through our five senses. Unless you expand your psychic senses, then you can perceive them. Vladdy has a great question here. What tasks did dragons do? Great question, Vladdy.
And again, I'm going back to my awareness of when they were actually on the planet before they completely went into the other realm. Dragons were great protectors. They held the mountains. They were in touch with the mountain spirits. They held the energy of the mountains. They helped with the weather spirits. They helped with the higher workings of the planet. And so when any contact I had with dragons that I can remember at this point, it was always a very high awareness. It's like looking at lizards now. Look at lizards and snakes. They hold that same awareness. The reptiles hold the ancient knowledge. So if you look at a lizard, you'll find they look right back at you, and you can communicate with them. And dragons were like that too. They would just hold that and be very, very aware. And so sometimes they would ally themselves with different humans who were very aware, and they would help them. They had a lot of function as holding higher energies and making the balance. Actually, it's what everybody does. When you look at all the roles on planet Earth, everyone has a role to help with the balance on the Earth. Everybody, whatever species, whatever form, their role when they're in the physical is to do their function to create the harmony and the balance.
Yeah. Alison says here that just as you were talking about protection before, I call in blue dragons to protect my horses. Alison also works with horses. And beautiful. Susan says dragons help me transmute separate consciousness into the divine, separated consciousness into the divine. Beautiful, Susan. Yeah, so do you think, Penelope, that the dragons will return physically, or have they had their day on this?
No,
in this world?
they're not like dinosaurs. Dragons are completely different things because dinosaurs were really physical beings of a certain consciousness and a certain way of living. Dragons have a whole different way of living. So yes, they could come back. And the people who communicate with dragons now, and like you said, you asked the blue dragons to help with your horses. If you spend time with them, you may find that they become more present to you, even with a physical appearance. There are times when, although I asked that Sasquatch not to appear physically because it was going to be scary for me to have this big hairy being who smells, very strong.
Yeah, I've heard they smell
community.
bad.
So
Yeah.
I just went, no, I'd appreciate that. But we had a good communication. But with the dragons, you may find that communicating with them, they'll appear to you even more tangibly. Like you get that with the nature spirits. You start communicating with the elves or the fairies, and they'll appear more tangible to you. But to come out fully and appear in the physical, it's not the right timing. It's not. It doesn't fit. This is a big timing on the earth for humans. People in human form, beings in human form, to learn a whole lot of things about balance and harmony and cooperation.
Right.
And this is taking precedence. And, if you think, well, humans should be, you should just get rid of them on the planet. I go, there's a reason so many beings have taken human form. There's a lot of juice happening in the human consciousness and growth happening. It's happening all over. I mean, it isn't just happening with humans, it's happening with every being. But allow whoever is here, allow them their day. It may be that humans' bodies will be honed down to a much smaller amount sometime. I mean, that's certainly not up to me, but just allow everybody their day. They'll let you know when it's right for them. They'll appear to beings who they can appear to. And then when it's their time, when people are in a different state of consciousness, and I'm seeing a lot of visions of one of the potential futures is where we're all kind of floating all around and we're teleporting, and telepathy is just, totally natural, but we also move in a different way where we don't have this heaviness where we have to have cars to move us around, where we just kind of float. But you'll see this in a lot of the storybooks. You'll see this in the movies, that people know what is possible. People know what is potential, and people also get glimpses of the future. They also get glimpses of what was. So when I was young, I read the storybooks and I said, these are much more real than what people think is real in this universe.
Yeah. Heidi says that she sees the Fae in physical ways more than 3 years ago when she moved here. I think you're in Colorado. You always say hello from Colorado. I got that right, Heidi. But yeah, I see the Fae in a physical way too, in that I don't see their bodies, but I see the lights. I see their lights. I see through my outside eyes, my physical eyes, I see their light. And it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing.
It is, and it's beautiful to open up to all those consciousness.
The future. The future is something that came up just before we came on to meet each other. I thought, what am I going to talk about? And that question popped into my mind. Ask her about the future. And so, you've seen different futures. Do you want to go into that a bit more? Like when you said you saw a future where everyone's communicating telepathically and we're much lighter physically, and we navigate this earth without cars. What else did it look like?
Well, what I have seen, and this has come to me many times in my life, is and again, when you read the news and you focus on the physical, you think, well, humans are just going to destroy and pollute the whole earth and it's all going to be gone,
Right.
or humans are going to be gone at least, or, we're destroying all the species and blah, blah, blah. But you see, these are superficial realities. There's an undercurrent of reality of creation, which we are obviously a part of, that we can tap into, just like you tap into when you communicate with your blue dragons or the fae. You're tapping into a reality that is here and that is bigger than the reality of superficial reality that is constantly on the news, that is being drummed into people as this is the reality. So, okay, I'm always tapping into all kinds of dimensions, and I do a lot of shamanic work, and I feel all kinds of beings. And it has been shown to me that one of the realities that the people who want this, again, we have a lot of choices. So I feel there can be branchings, like people who haven't had enough of murder and war and torture, they'll branch into a reality, an earth reality, where this is still possible so they can learn from it. And then those of us who are done with that, we've had our adventure with war and all that, and we're wanting a different consciousness where, again, many of you have expressed this consciousness of communicating with the mountains and the Mother Earth and the fairies and the dragons and all these beings who are very conscious, and with each other who are very conscious. Okay, so what I have seen is that there's a reality where a lot of the human the consciousness that will continue to stay in the reality of harm to others. Let's just call it harm, where you're pummeling each other's bodies. Okay, that's going to be on one level, but many of us are not in that consciousness. So either you go to other dimensions, or in this dimension, you create another reality. So what I have seen is there will be a smaller amount of humans, but many humans who are very aware souls, who have woken up to their abilities to be united with all life, all consciousness, whether in body or out of body. And so I see us floating. I see us floating around. So when I want to visit a friend in another area, and she or he or whoever wants to live somewhere else, I just float over to them, but it takes no time.
So
I just go, okay, I'll be at your
teleportation.
house in 30 seconds.
So
or 10
teleportation.
Yeah, like teleportation, but sort of a floating. It's not even like teleportation like they show in the movies, where you have to have a machine, you go into this and your molecules dissolve and they reappear. No, you just kind of float and you're in their space. So it's space and time are altered. Similar to how we can do that in other dimensions, time and space are not the same.
I was going to say that sounds like the astral world, where when we're in different levels of different astral worlds, and we're in a physical form, but it's an astral physical form, so it's more subtle, and time and space is altered. But thought creates more quickly. So when you think about someone, you're with them rather than having to travel to be with them. But and there are different levels of density in astral worlds, like there is on physical worlds.
And what I saw, though, is that it's our Mother Earth here, who we love so much, and she has recreated it all for those who want to live in that kind of harmony. So I can go visit you in Australia in the blink of an eye. I just say, okay, Karen, do you want to meet here, or should we meet over here? But we still have time and space. We still have awareness of, I live in the desert over here, or you live over there, but we can transfer very quickly. Anyway, I saw communities. I saw people still growing things. There were things to grow. We weren't so reliant on denser food energy. We got more energy from just feeling it from
Oh,
the
okay.
plants and the animals, just transferring energy by our consciousness rather than having to put
Food in our mouth.
pieces in our mouth.
A bit like how a plant feeds itself. Like, what's the mechanism called? Synthesis.
Photosynthesis.
Photosynthesis.
Through light. And so anyway, it seemed to be quite easy. And it's interesting to me because there's so many different realities in other dimensions. And when I talk to my friends, and I have many friends who have gone on, and they show me their experiences, and sometimes they, completely dissolve into unity, and then other times they come back into, some form of identity. And their experiences are all different. Some are sitting in different gardens, and some are doing different things. And I go, well, but I feel that the earth is destined for a reality that is coming, that we're all sort of creating together. When we talk about dragons, and when we talk about this time and space ability, we're sort of creating a lighter reality, but that is still earth.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not so, because a lot of the things that make it hard to live on earth are the survival issues.
Right.
That we get hungry and we have to feed ourselves. Then things get scarce, or people think they're scarce when, of course, they're quite abundant. But, that requires cooperation and sharing. And humans, again, have the human condition of the greed and the this and the that, all of which we're transmuting, we're accepting and integrating and transmuting into love. When we get there, when we get into this, I feel like we're going to have it will be earth, but it's going to be really, really beautiful. And we won't be stuck in the survival modes that end up creating conflict. Even animals, and have conflict because of survival modes. They end up killing each other, or they're competing.
This is a question I've asked other animal communicators too. As we evolve to a more conscious earth where we're not in survival mode, so a lot of animals, hunt and kill other animals to live. And to us, it looks quite violent and gory, blood everywhere. Do you think that will shift, or will that stay the same? Do you think that as we move to a less violent earth? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I feel that the survival issues are going to change. In other words, we won't have to be fed on dense matter and take each other's bodies. Because whether you take plant bodies or animal bodies, it's all the same.
So even the animals
yes, of course,
into that consciousness.
We're all evolving together. See, this is again, I find with some human spiritual teachers, they think that animals are something different and only humans are evolving, but we're actually all evolving together. So at least in my world, there will be all different forms, and there will be many animals.
Right.
And all kinds, and we will just get along together, and we won't have to eat each other.
Yeah, exactly. I see that. You see that online a lot, the evolution of the animal kingdom, because, the consensus is being that you can't talk to, I don't know, there's that biblical story about St. Francis, and he was so loving that all the animals, like the birds, landed on him. Like that is common. That's common on Instagram these days, people having birds land on them and talk to them, and different species that are like cats and dogs loving each other, and a duck and a pig being best friend, or a horse and a dog being best friends. I mean, there are so many stories on the internet that are showing the evolution of the consciousness throughout the animal kingdom. We've got about just over 10 minutes to go. Penelope and I were chatting before we went live about past lives. We recognize each other from a past life, or maybe we're in different bodies. So, but it was a fascinating conversation. I said, can we share that on this show? And she said, yeah, it's not really on topic, but we were talking about being around, I was talking about being around at the time of Atlantis and decisions I made during that period of the destruction of Atlantis, and then the decisions I made being around at the time when Jesus was on the planet, and decisions I made in that life, which has affected all my other lives, including this life. And you shared a story of memory of who you were during that time when Jesus walked the earth about 2,000 years ago. Do you want to share that with us?
Sure. I sparked on this because to get to know Karen a little bit, I watched some of her videos, and one of her videos said she had a one in her past life, she knew Jesus. And I went, oh, okay, because I was very aware of that, and that I also had been at the time of Jesus. So I'll just share it with you, because this is not something I have the opportunity to do very often or ever even talk about, except with, certain people when it comes up. But when at the time of Christ, Jesus Christ, on the earth, I was a Jewish prophet. I was walking around the desert, and I was blind. I had been born blind, and I had a lot of followers. And
you were male.
And I was male. And I had a lot of followers, and I just, it was what I was meant to do. So people fed me and they took care of me, and I preached to them, and helped them in any way that I could. So then I heard of Jesus. So I went to one of his gatherings. There were a whole lot of people gathering around, and I instantly recognized him, not with obviously my physical sight, because I didn't have any. I felt that soul, and I knew him. And so I went up to him, and Jesus actually healed my sight. And he put mud over my eyes, and I healed my sight. Now, I actually didn't even need this to feel who he was, but it was a manifestation that he did to show other people that when you are attuned, you can heal. And so, and your touch is beautiful and aligned and magic. So then I just followed him, and I told my followers that he has the latest, he has the latest and the greatest of what I have been telling you. He is a prophet, and he is here to lead us into the greatest love. So that was my awareness of the time of Jesus. It was very special.
Yeah, beautiful. Do you remember? Because I remember I was sharing with Penelope that I've only had a couple of past life regressions, and both times somebody that grew up in a secular lifestyle with no religious upbringing, didn't even think about religion, kept seeing myself during the time of the crucifixion. And the thing that came up the most for me was the fear, because I was one of his followers. And during that time, with the persecution of crucifying him, they were sort of going out and catching and arresting all the people that followed him, and there was this persecution thing. But I asked my guides who I was, and they said to me, it's not important for you to remember that identity, because the ego gets in the way. But what's important for you to remember is that you made a decision in that lifetime that you've carried through all your other lifetimes, and that was to keep teaching the message. Just keep teaching the message. Like, we're all one soul, we're all extensions of the source. The message that has been quite lost throughout religion, in all religions really. But to keep
but
sharing
look how
the
many
message.
people now are carrying that light,
Right.
are carrying that unity consciousness and that love, and that's what it's about. But it's a big thing, in our evolution. What Jesus brought was a big whoosh, and it takes people on their journeys, because again, they're not completed with the adventures that get in the way of that unity consciousness. So when they're completed, then they go, well, what's next? Well,
Yes.
This is what's next.
Yeah. Exactly. And I was sharing with Penelope that I was watching a show about Jesus, and many of the times I watch shows about Jesus, I have the memory of what happened. I'm like, that didn't happen. He didn't say that. That didn't happen, which is kind of funny, because I don't think about it unless I'm watching something. But I was thinking about what he was teaching back then, and doing all these miracles, and how he had this elevated consciousness, and he had he could heal people. Many people on the planet are doing those miracles today. I've done it on myself. I've healed a cut instantly. I've healed cancer in my body. Just, like all this stuff that was considered miracles is just a level of consciousness. But he was speaking 2,000 years ago to what we're just discovering now in this time. It's kind of interesting that the message he was bringing 2,000 years ago is being realized now. And including interspecies communication, talking to the animals, talking to the earth, talking to everything. But 5 minutes left. What about talking to intergalactic species? Do you do much of that, Penelope?
I have, yes.
And what have they shared with you?
Well, for me, again, my memories are of being on other planets. This isn't the only planet, and this isn't the only dimension. And so when I started to go into my past lives, I was aware that I was, in many, 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 many countless places.
Forms, exactly.
On the earth in different forms. And when this lifetime, when beings from other places have contacted me, I always look at, well, what is the intention? What is this regarding our mission here on, awakening? And so I feel like people are attracted to what is necessary for them to grow. So if there are so many groups of beings of all different awarenesses. So you just get attracted to those beings of intergalactic beings and beings from different places. And when we're talking about this now, I feel just so many beings shining their light onto us. Just because we're acknowledging that there are all these amazing beings and that we are welcoming that light into our being. No, I keep seeing this incredible blue light keeps coming.
Yeah.
And we're welcoming that light into our being. To me, there's no question that there are gazillions and gazillions of beings everywhere. And some are very advanced and some are not. So you align yourself with whoever is helpful to you and that you're here to help too. So you can only do so much when you're in form.
Yeah.
So you focus on what you're here for, but there's all these possibilities. So when you talk about it, it's lovely talking with you and the people who have put their chats in, because you've obviously expanded your consciousness to include many, many beings.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing because it's infinite. The realms are infinite, the beings are infinite. And so we have a lot of choice.
Yeah. As we're speaking, I've got a window in front of me. There's this little mosquito looking, it's a bit bigger than a mosquito, I don't know what it is, at the window, just sort of buzzing around saying hi, just sort of trying to get in. But, disclosure is ramping up like exponentially on this planet. The politicians are getting involved, the mainstream media are getting involved. And the communication across the cosmos is predominantly telepathic communication. So if we haven't yet learned to communicate with the different species on our own planet, what hope do we have as a collective to communicate with different species from other planets? I think that it's really important that we all expand and learn more about our telepathic abilities and communication, which is why I was telling Penelope about the telepathy tapes is become this smash hit podcast, because it's bringing that awareness of telepathy into the mainstream. And so are you, darling one. You're doing an amazing job. Thank you for being on the planet and for all that you've done to bring awareness and teachings to us about our interspecies communication or telepathic abilities. We've got I think we've run out of time. I was going to say we've got 1 minute, but thank you for being on the show.
Thank
it's been
you,
an
Karen.
absolute blessing. And And Penelope does do amazing work teaching through the Shift Network. And if you want to, I know she's got a big course that's coming up like right now that's starting like tomorrow. So it might be a bit late to join that for 6 months, but you do a lot of work teaching people about this stuff. And if you want to know more about that, just get in contact with me and I'll send you her way. All her links are on the link in the description that says see more here. You'll see us on different platforms there, on the SoundCloud, the audio platforms, and the different Rumble and Odyssey and different video platforms. And thank you everyone that's been, sorry I didn't get to all your questions. It's been a great audience today. It's been just amazing. I want to thank everybody that's been in the chat. Yeah, I have an amazing audience, I have to say. Thirsty, thank you. Thirsty always sends emojis. You never really ask questions, Thirsty. You always just send great emojis. And Diane and Patricia, thank you. Thank you again, Penelope.
Thank you.
It's been a blast. So next week on the show, we've run out of time, but next week on the show, Gary Zucroft is coming, a spiritual teacher that was made well known by Oprah, another beautiful spiritual teacher. So I look forward to that. And if you have any questions, pop them in the chat. If you're watching the recording, let us know what you thought about the show. Pop your comments. I love to hear your comments if you're watching the recordings in the chat, because unfortunately all these amazing questions and comments don't show up in the chat after the live is finished. So yeah, pop your comments in after the live has finished, and we'll catch you all next time. Big love. Bye for now.